Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a kind of poverty you've probably never heard of before. It's a hidden problem, one that's growing right where our digital lives and our environmental crises crash into each other. Let's get right into it.
So, to kick things off, I want to ask a pretty basic question. What is poverty today, in the 21st century? Because for most of history, the answer seemed really simple, didn't it? It was all about how much money you had.
But yeah, that's a pretty old school way of looking at it now. For a long time, poverty was just measured by a simple income line. You were either above it or below it. But social scientists now see it as way more complex. It's multidimensional. It's really about lacking the tools and the access to things like good healthcare, education, or even clean water. You know, the stuff you need to actually build a decent life. To really get a handle on poverty in our time, you have to look at two enormous crises that are shaping everything. And here's the kicker. We usually talk about them as if they're totally separate. I'm talking about the digital divide and the green divide.
Okay, first up, digital poverty. And let me be clear, this is about so much more than just not having the latest iPhone. It's about being fundamentally locked out of the systems that run our modern world. Think about it. Applying for jobs, getting healthcare, banking. It's all online. If you're not there, you're invisible.
And here's what's crucial to understand. Digital poverty isn't just one thing. It actually has three different levels. The first one is the most obvious, a lack of access. You just don't have a computer or a reliable internet connection. But then there's the second level, a lack of skills. Maybe you have a phone, but you don't know how to use it safely or effectively. And finally, the third level, a lack of meaningful outcomes. This is where, even if you have access and skills, you're still not seeing any real positive change in your life from being online.
And the real-world impact of this? It is absolutely staggering. Just look at the pandemic lockdowns in 2020. A whopping 463 million kids around the world were completely cut off from remote learning. Why? Mostly because they were stuck on that very first level of digital poverty, no access.
Now let's switch gears to that second crisis, the green divide. For years, there have been two big competing stories about this. You've got the optimists, who follow what's called ecological modernization theory. They believe we can innovate our way out of this mess, that technology and economic growth can actually work together to create a healthier planet. And then you have the pessimists. Their idea is called the treadmill of production theory. They argue that our whole economic system is built on a need for endless growth, and that treadmill will always lead to us chewing up resources and polluting the planet.
So you've got these two giant, complicated problems running in parallel. But what happens when you stop looking at them separately? What happens when they overlap and start feeding each other? Well, you get a completely new kind of poverty. It's called digital environmental poverty. And you can think of it like a really nasty feedback loop. Being digitally excluded makes you more vulnerable to environmental problems. And dealing with those environmental problems makes it even harder to ever get connected. It just goes round and round.
Okay, let's make this real. Picture a family struggling with energy poverty. They can't afford a smart thermostat or other tech that could lower their energy bills. And because they might lack digital skills, they can't hop online to search for a cheaper energy provider. So their bills stay high, eating up any spare cash they might have used to, say, buy a laptop for their kids or get better internet. You see the trap? It's a cycle that's incredibly hard to break. So, the big question is, how do you break a cycle like that? To dig into some possible answers, we're going to look at two world powers taking two totally different approaches: the United Kingdom and its market-led strategy versus the state-led model of China.
And honestly, their philosophies could not be more different. The UK basically puts its faith in the free market. It relies on private companies and voluntary groups to drive change, creating markets for green tech and digital inclusion. China, it's the complete opposite. They've made something called ecological civilization a national constitutional goal. It's a top-down order from the central government that shapes literally everything.
And here's a brilliant example of China's strategy in action. It's an app called Ant Forest, which is built right into the giant payment platform Alipay. It basically turns being green into a game. You get green energy points for doing things like taking the bus or riding a bike. You use those points to grow a little virtual tree on your phone. And once it's fully grown, the company and its partners plant a real tree. The scale is just mind-blowing. Over 600 million people have used it to plant more than 300 million trees.
The UK's journey, on the other hand, has been a lot longer and maybe a little more winding. I mean, they were a world leader on this, passing the Climate Change Act way back in 2008, which set legally binding targets. But the progress hasn't always been a straight line. Just recently, the government announced delays on some key green policies. It just goes to show you how a market-led approach can sometimes be a bit volatile.
So what's the bottom line here? What are the trade-offs? Well, China's top-down approach allows for incredibly fast, massive-scale projects. But, and it's a big but, it comes with huge concerns about government surveillance and very little public participation. The UK's model is great for encouraging private innovation, but it can also lead to fragmented, disconnected policies, and it often relies on charities and volunteer groups to fill in the massive gaps. So, yeah, neither approach is perfect.
Okay, so if these national models each have their own big flaws, what does a global solution even look like? How do we actually build a sustainable future that tackles both the digital and the green divides at the same time?
Well, there's a potential roadmap out there from a group called Codes. They propose 3 big critical shifts. First, we need to get everyone aligned, get governments and companies all pointing in the same direction. Second, we have to mitigate the damage. That means closing the digital divide for good and getting serious about stuff like e-waste. And third, we need to accelerate innovation, aiming our most powerful tech directly at solving our biggest environmental challenges.
And in the end, it all really boils down to this, a powerful idea from the authors of the work that inspired this explainer. The future depends on our ability to use these technologies for our benefit rather than letting them use us. It's about taking control.
Which leaves us with this one final massive question to chew on. We've seen how technology can create deeper divides and really harm the planet, but we've also seen its incredible potential to do good. So can the very tool that helped get us into this mess also be the tool that gets us out? That's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.